The old family cottage on Lake Meridian was supposed to be a sanctuary. I stood in the master bedroom, the one that had been my grandparents', unpacking a box of books. The late October wind clawed at the eaves, and the only light came from a single, dusty bulb overhead. My actions were methodical, a deliberate focus on the mundane, to ignore the pressing silence of the place. I lifted a heavy volume of Wordsworth, the leather cover cool under my fingers. I was thinking that the silence here wasn't empty. It was absorbent, soaking up sound and intention, leaving only a vacuum. I felt a profound loneliness, the kind that precedes a storm, a static charge in the soul. I turned to place the book on the shelf built into the wall beside the brick fireplace. As I did, my elbow brushed against the floral wallpaper. The patch I touched gave way with a soft, dry crunch, not like paper, but like a wasp's nest. I jerked back. A jagged hole, the size of my fist, now gaped in the wall. Inside wasn't plaster or lathe. It was a darkness so complete it seemed to swallow the yellow light from the bulb. I leaned closer, my breath catching. I thought it must be some old chimney flue, boarded up and forgotten. But the air drifting from it was frigid and carried a scent of wet clay, and something older, like opened grave soil. My emotion curdled from surprise into a sharp, needle-pointed dread. Driven by a morbid compulsion, I raised my hand and slowly reached toward the opening. My fingers trembled. I was thinking this was stupid. Don't do this. Just get the tape and cover it up tomorrow. But my hand kept moving. The chill from the hole intensified, a deep February cold. My fingertips crossed the threshold. From the absolute blackness within the wall, something cold and dry closed around my wrist. It was not a hand. It was a concatenation of things. Brittle twigs, desiccated roots, ancient, crumbling bandages, all bound by a force that was pure gelid malice. It yanked. My shoulder slammed against the wallpaper, my arm buried to the elbow in the wall. I cried out, a raw sound swallowed by the room. I threw my weight backward, my boots scrambling for purchase on the wood floor. I was thinking only one word: no, no, no. My emotions were a white-out panic, a pure animal terror of being consumed by the dark. The force from the hole was relentless, pulling not just on my arm, but with a sucking hunger that seemed to drain the warmth from my very blood. I could feel a deep, resonant vibration coming up my arm, a subaudible hum that spoke of a vast, hollow space behind our world. I hooked my free arm round the bedpost, muscles screaming. I felt a terrible, dry scraping along my captured wrist, a sensation of being measured, of marrow being assessed. With a final, desperate roar, I wrenched myself backward. I fell in a heap. My wrist was livid with a ring of cold burns, etched with faint, spiraling patterns of dirt and decay. The hole in the wall was just a hole again, dark and silent. I crawled away, pressing my back against the far wall, clutching my injured arm to my chest. I was thinking it was over. It had taken its taste and left. My feeling was a shattered relief, so profound it was nausea. Then, from everywhere and nowhere, a sound began. A soft, percussive, tapped-up tap scritch. It started inside the wall with the hole. Then it answered from inside the wall behind the headboard. Then from the ceiling above me. Then from under the floorboards beneath my knees. A legion of dry, hollow things moving in the cavities of the house, scratching at the thin membranes that separated their darkness from my light. They were not gone. They had been invited by the breach, and now they were everywhere, tapping, searching for the next weak spot, the next warm thing to hollow out and fill with their terrible, empty cold. Every night at 3:07 a.m., the motion-activated floodlight at the foot of the long gravel driveway would click on. I was in the kitchen, pouring a glass of water, the sudden blast of white light washing out the window over the sink. My action was frozen, the water overflowing the rim and pooling on the counter. I was thinking it was a deer again, or that possum that kept getting into the garbage. But the light always stayed on for its full 30-second cycle. Animals moved. This never did. I would stand there, in the dark kitchen, the only sound, the drip of the spill, and the hum of the refrigerator. I felt a creeping, nightly dread, a ritual of fear. Tonight, I decided to look. I moved to the side window, the one that offered a clearer view down the slope of the lawn. I pressed my face to the cold glass, my breath fogging it. The light was blinding, creating a stark island in the pitch black of the rural night. He stood at the absolute edge of the lit circle, where the gravel met the country road. A tall man in a long dark coat, his back to me. He was perfectly still. I thought, maybe it's a neighbor, a weirdo, a lost hitchhiker. But no lost person stands that still, at that hour, night after night, never turning around. My emotion was a tight coil of anxiety in my gut, winding tighter with each passing second of the light's duration. The light died, plunging the driveway and the man into perfect blackness. I stood in the dark, blind, my heart hammering against my ribs. I was thinking he would be gone now. The show was over. The darkness outside was absolute, a solid wall. I felt a fragile relief. I turned to go back to bed. A soft, slow crunch. Gravel, underweight, from the top of the driveway. My blood turned to ice. My actions were slow, terrified, as I turned my head back to the window. I could see nothing, but I could hear it. Another crunch. Closer, he was walking up the driveway, in the total dark. Step by deliberate step. I wasn't thinking anymore. My mind was a silent scream. My feeling was pure, undiluted terror, the kind that locks your joints and steals the air from your lungs. The steps didn't stop at the door. They came round the side of the house, towards the backyard. On the path that led past the kitchen window, I dropped below the windowsill, crouching on the cold linoleum. I could hear him just outside, the footsteps stopping right by the window under which I now hid. A long, silent pause stretched out thin and razor-sharp. I could smell it, then a scent of ozone and damp earth seeping through the window frame. Then, a new sound. A faint, wet dragging, like a heavy, damp rag being pulled slowly down the outside of the glass pane, directly above my head. It slid from the top to the bottom, leaving a streak of palpable darkness I could feel through the wall. The thing outside wasn't trying to look in. It was marking the house, marking my spot. The dragging stopped. The footsteps began again, moving back down the driveway, fainter and fainter until they were gone. I stayed on the floor until dawn. I knew, with a certainty that was colder than the floor, that he would be back tomorrow at 3:07 a.m., and the next night, and the night after that. But now, he knew exactly which window was mine. And the 30-second interval of light wasn't a barrier. It was a countdown. A countdown until he could walk up the driveway in the dark. And next time, perhaps that wet dragging sound wouldn't be on the outside of the glass. I moved into the old row house on Candlewick Lane because it had a working fireplace. Tonight, I was kneeling before it, stacking kindling over crumpled newspaper. The room was cold, the central heating a feeble ghost in the pipes. My actions were focused on the task, a small ritual of comfort. I struck a match, the sulfur scent sharp. I was thinking of nothing but the promised warmth. I felt a simple, domestic contentment. The fire caught, orange tongues licking the dry wood. As the flames grew, they cast a living, dancing light on the soot-stained back wall of the fireplace. That's when I saw it, a face. Not carved, but formed by the natural contours of the ancient brick and accumulated creosote. A deep depression for a mouth, 2 soot-dark hollows for eyes, a long streak for a nose. It was a pareidolia trick, I was sure. My mind making patterns, but the firelight made it swim, gave the mouth a downward, hungry tilt. I sat back in the armchair, a book open on my lap, trying to ignore it. But the fire's rhythm was off. Instead of a steady crackle, it would flare with a soft hump, then die to Narembas, then hump again. It was breathing. The thought slid into my mind, cold and unwelcome. I pushed it away. My emotion shifted to a low-grade unease, a sense of being watched from that shadowy, elemental hole. An hour passed. The room was warm, almost too warm, but my feet were icy. The fire had settled into a slow, deep pulsing of light. In, out, in, out. I found my own breath sinking with it. A deep, weary lethargy settled over me. My thoughts grew fuzzy. I was thinking I should go to bed, but my body was so heavy, the chair felt like it was holding me. My feeling was one of sedated helplessness. My eyes closed. I didn't mean to sleep, but I drifted into a shallow fever dream state. In the dream, I was sitting right where I was, but the fireplace was a gaping black mouth, and from it poured not heat, but a freezing, silent wind, and I couldn't close my own mouth. It was stuck open, a round, numb O of shock, and the cold wind from the fireplace was flowing into me, filling my lungs, my stomach, my veins with black, particulate frost. I jolted awake with a strangled gasp. The fire was low, just crimson coals. The room was freezing again, and I couldn't breathe in. My chest was locked. Panic exploded in my brain. I clutched my throat, my eyes wide, staring at the fire. The face in the soot was grinning now, a gash of triumphant black. My actions were frantic, pathetic, thrashing. I was thinking I was having a heart attack, an allergic reaction, anything but the truth. But the truth was in the sensation. This wasn't a blockage. This was an absence. My lungs were empty and wouldn't inflate. I had exhaled in my sleep, and the thing in the fireplace had taken that breath, that warm, living exhalation, and had not given it back. It was holding it in the vacuum of its brick-and-jute lungs. I was drowning on dry land. With a final, desperate convulsion of will, I fell forward out of the chair, onto the rug before the hearth. My hand, flailing, struck the iron fire poker. I gripped it, and with the last spark of my strength, I smashed it into the center of the glowing coals. A cloud of ash and sparks erupted into the room, and I inhaled. A ragged, screaming, beautiful gasp of air filled my burning chest. It was thick with ash and tasted of old smoke, but it was air. I lay sobbing on the floor, the cold seeping into me from the floorboards. I felt ravaged, hollowed out by terror. I looked up, tears cutting through the soot on my face. The fire was dead. The face in the back of the fireplace was just a random stain again. But as I watched, a final, fat coal in the very center of the ash pulsed once with a deep, red light, like a single, watching eye. And then, with a soft sigh that seemed to come from the chimney itself, it went dark. It had my breath, and it would be hungry for the rest of me, soon.